So, we want to start off with a segment that we're calling Connect and Inspire. And within this segment, we want you to do a couple of things. So on your round tables, I had asked 5 people per table or on the seats. So if you're more than 5, please locate another table where there's no one you know. And on this table, we want you to discuss something. As my screen is coming back on. So there was a question that we had shared with you. So, share your name, your organization, and how your work engages with this networking gatherings theme, Fair Futures for Africa. Within that same table, you'll discuss what you think is the best thing we can do for the current and next generation to ensure a fair future for all Africans. And for those who are working in Kenya, how can we trickle down to what we can do collectively in Kenya in the lead up to the summit of the future. And then we will come back and get your perspectives. But as you're doing that, after 10 minutes, I will ask you to mingle in other tables. So the first Connect and Inspire session starts now. And on your table, there is a colored paper. On that paper, we want you to discuss some of those ideas, to write them down, some of the things we can do. So please dive in, connect and inspire.
This evening. I go ahead with you.
Yes, share with us some of the ideas that you talked about for how we can achieve fairer future for all.
One of the ideas is more intergenerational dialogues.
Find another.
And then the next one is utilizing the current resources, that is the talents, gifts, whatever we already have. There's so much that we have. So how do we harness that to be able to achieve a fairer future for all Africans?
Great, that's beautiful. Thank you, Corazon. This beautiful table. Sarah, you've been nominated. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Hi everyone. My name is Fatma Mohammed. I work with a disability organization, and one of the ideas that we were discussing here was how to make fair futures by inclusion. A progressive society is where nobody is left behind. So by including persons with disabilities, we believe that our society is going to be very progressive.
That is so important. A round of applause, because that is a constituency that is always missing in every conversation. So we're going to bring it to this table. Stephen, you've been nominated to be that guy, you know, that guy.
So it's more semantics. We said transgenerational communication versus dialogue. But I'm actually going to steal Katindi's from that table because I love the idea of decolonizing the mind, which writ large is important.
Great, thank you, Stephen. You didn't introduce yourself. I keep saying Stephen. Introduce.
I'm Stephen.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephen. This table, you've been nominated. I see fingers pointing.
So question 2 and 3.
Briefly.
So on article there's a bit of bias on technology and width. And what we were sharing is that there are a lot of interventions that are coming up that their focus, they use, that choose technology and we're not ensuring that at least this is cascaded to everyone, especially people who are coming from underserved communities and have minimal access to resources. And so for us is how do we ensure that we're bridging the digital divide to reach the unreached, and so that we can get to access a fairer future that is provided by opportunities that technology presents.
Brilliant. And there's a high demand for you to introduce yourself.
So my name is Magdalene Onjogo, and I work for an organization called Nairobi's Trust. And we use technology to empower young people from underserved and marginalized communities.
Great. So bridging the digital divide. A round of applause. Thank you. This table.
Well,
30 seconds.
Sure, I'll just pick it up from where she's left. So my name is Wendy Omare, Program Manager at Friedrich Naumann Foundation, Global Partnership Hub for Development Cooperation. I think one thing that we all agreed here is in terms of educating Africa for the future. This is in line with if we look at the new model for the globalization of the world of employment, in that we right now see that in the global north, there's that gap in that most of their employees are baby boomers generation who are going through retirement, and there's that need for them to fill these gaps. And so they're looking back into the global south for young people in Africa to actually fill this gap. So we are exploring the digital grid, the way she said, in terms of like migration without migration. So how can we actually have a both win-win situation between the global north and the global south in terms of the new world order of sort of looking at globalization 2.0. Thank you.
Great, brilliant. Asante, you just hold on to that mic for me. And last but not least, a clap for her.
Hi everyone, my name is Waboi Moremi. I'm here in two capacities as the youth advisor to the Netherlands Embassy to Kenya. And I also work with a program called the Business Environment and Export Enhancement Program with Trademark Africa. So with that, we're working a lot on transitioning exports, especially of fresh produce from air to sea freight. And so what we discussed with my team, one of the ways we can, answer 2 and 3 is utilizing the networks we have, such as this summit here, just to encourage conversations. And then, from those conversations, then creating access for young people, and also using, a forum like the summit to just get the learnings and utilize them as well.
Brilliant, thank you. A round of applause for her, please. Great. So, our hosting us here today, I want to invite How did that feel to just give us just a few minutes of what you prepared for us today. I'm not going to jinx it.
Thank you very much, Pasi, and good evening to all of you. And it's an honor to be in your presence and for all of you to have come on a wet evening. As Pasi said, I work with the Society for International Development. I am a Deputy Managing Director there. And for those of you who don't know, the Society for International Development is an old institution that has been trying to work for development that is just, equitable, and sustainable. Over the years, an SID, I think, was founded in 1957, so you can do the math. There have been subsequent generations of people, and we are now here trying to take the conversation to the next generation of people. So I'm also quite encouraged to see the number of young people in this room who are willing to participate in our activities. We have been involved with Futures and Foresight for about the past 3 decades, and really our journey began in this country. And when we started launching scenarios in the public interest, working with the Institute for Economic Affairs at the time, and that journey, I think, has taken us very many different places. Of course, we did the work in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda. We did scenarios for East Africa, and also in Ethiopia. That is in the region, but we've also been involved with other places beyond the continent. Why this thing has been important for us is I think the future as a space for allowing our communities in different parts of society to engage and talk about what is important for them, I think has been underscored and underlined. we have learned many lessons, and there are just 2 lessons that I think I'd like to share with you, which I think are relevant for this gathering and the conversation we're going to have. First, I think is the need to understand the paradigm of social change that we're seeking and how to influence that change. Most of the times, we know we want change, we're not happy with the status quo. But how do we go around achieving that change and achieving the objectives we seek is a different thing. And the second thing is the fact that we also need to involve whole institutions in the learning. What we've been doing over the years is I think it touched a lot of people, and I think in this room you'll find a number of people who have had very transformative experiences of having engaged with the Futures and Foresight process. But how do we turn this work into institutions so that we can transform entire institutions to make them make the work that actually changes our society? So we have been experimenting in different things, and part of the journey that we have made has been to get into partnership with the School of International Futures. It's a partnership which I believe is now, 4 or 5 years old. And we are coming to, let's say, a new stage of this friendship, which is the launching of this Fairer Futures for Africa. And you'll be hearing much more about that. But the important thing about this is that we share a vision. And it's a vision in which we want to see an Africa that is regenerative and that is intergenerationally fair. I think one thing that also characterizes pretty much our continent is the absence of discourse or dialogue between the different generations. It's not that they lack ideas or visions or what they would like to do, but simply we do not have ways and means to have meaningful conversations between the two. So what we'll be doing, and you'll hear much more from the team about this, is how we intend to go around this in terms of trying to bring together or build bridges that can allow these different segments of society to work together. Just a couple of words on the context in which we find ourselves. When we work on trying to help people imagine new and different futures, we are not entering into this space on a tabula rasa, on a blank sheet of paper. We come in and we find that people are facing the future on the basis of promises that have been made, projects that have failed, others that have succeeded, and then also the legacy of the past. One of the critical things that I think we have never been able to unlock is how do we deal with the burden of the past. And in this part of the world, it is a very, very significant drag that sort of stops things in interesting ways. The second thing is that in seeking to build this future, we seem to be addicted to linear models of development. So incremental. When you talk about development here, people will think about Singapore. People will show you images of Dubai. That's fine, but is that what we really want? When we go to our rural areas, are they interested in becoming another Dubai, or do they have something in mind? And I hope through some of these conversations, we can be able to tease out these different ideas that people might have and see how we can make sense out of all of them. We may not all want to live in the Singapore, Dubai, but at least let us make our spaces dignified and that allow us to pursue our goals and dreams. And I think we also need to look at some of the softer things that hold back development. 2 things in particular, trust and values. We oftentimes go into this process and conversations about how do we build the future, how do we make institutions work, without understanding the role that trust plays. And this is a low-trust society, and I'll not spend time speaking about that, but we have had this situation whereby, and you can see it pretty much, we do not trust our government, we do not trust our political leaders, we do not trust our church leaders, the children do not trust their elders, so how do we make things work? I think that is something that we hope to be able to turn around. Which are the values that are going to guide us? And when you're building a story of the future, you need to find something that brings people together. It's values. What are the things that are going to be important to us as we begin to face the future? We need to be able to identify that and to work on that. So I hope that this process of Fairer Futures for Africa will allow us to also have conversations about the trust that is necessary to engender in our society, the values that we want to hold, and how we uphold them. So I think, and just to wrap up, we'll be trying to help ourselves understand the system. I am someone that believes very much that if we try to do change without understanding the system, we will end up reproducing what we've been trying to run away from. that means engaging in systems thinking and understanding what are the structures that create the reality that we engage with on a daily basis. And then to intervene in ways that are meaningful to shift that and to help it produce the reality that we want it to have. So that, in a sense, is what I believe we're trying to do with this process, and I'd like to invite all of you to join us on this journey. It's just starting here. We have a long-term vision, and there are other people who will speak to that. And I'm hopeful that as we go along, we can count on your support, whether it's moral, whether it's intellectual, or otherwise. We look forward to your support. Thank you very much, and wish you all a good day.
Great, thank you so much, Arthur. I told you it was an informal gathering, so I'm going to pick on someone to just give us, you'll introduce yourself, but 30 seconds of just what is running through your mind. 30 seconds. I'm coming to you, Arnold, you already know.
What's running through my mind? 30 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Power. Okay. Empowered African youth. Say 30 seconds.
That's it, and who are you?
Oh, sorry. I'm Arnold. I'm going to work for UAPP, Environment and Resilience Team. Thank you.
Okay, so those regenerative creatures will be there. Great. I'll keep doing that until we know everyone in the room. Another brief conversation we're going to have with Kat. And I'm going to invite you to join me here, if that's fine. There is this amazing transformative foresight triangle that we have up here. As you're giving your remarks on why we're here tonight, you're going to touch on a couple of things, Summit of the Future. Also, please take us through what this is, and feel free to move closer if you can't see what is here. So do come. Please come. And there's seats, if you want to sit, there's seats around.
Coach up.
Do coach up.
Coach up. About their future, their futures, is a deeply empowering act. And it's one that, in a world of uncertainty, and sometimes when we're lacking hope about what might happen in the future, these spaces for intergenerational connection about what the future might bring and how we want to shape it together is really, really important. And I think we're really getting a groundswell, and some of you in this room actually reflect that, which is how do we use futures, foresight, intergenerational conversations about the future to create a fairer future for current and next generations. And the answer is you. Right? We've got next generation foresight practitioners who are here. You are having these conversations in your sectors, whether it's in your communities, in the health sector, in the actuarial sector, people who are taking it to the disability community as well. So the ability to have these conversations and build futures literacy is really important. And so having citizens that are involved in shaping their future is really important. But then we've also got sectors, can you actually see the trends ahead? Do we have scenarios when we're doing strategic planning in government as officials or in business? Are we looking at the future together? That's also part of being able to build that capability to navigate the future ahead. But also, and most importantly, and this is why it's fantastic having Senator Ladama here, it's also really critical that politicians and leaders then make intergenerationally fair decisions. So what are the institutions for future generations, the accountability mechanisms for assessing whether decisions are intergenerationally fair, the processes for bringing in participatory futures dialogues into policy making? How do we do that? Now, this is a movement. Like, I see you as being core parts of the movement here. You've all selected on a cold, windy and wet night to come here and spend your time together. And that's because we have this belief in the concept of perhaps future generations as being a really important anchor to bring us together at the moment where we are in time. And I think it's that instinct that is also inspiring the UN's Summit of the Future. So that is where the UN Secretary General has decided with the member states that this year, in September 2024, we have to come together to create a pact of the future to say, How do we create the institutions to make sure that we make the right decisions for a fairer future for current and next generations? And member states are going to be signing up to this pact, and they're also going to sign a declaration for future generations. Now, the Netherlands, and this is why it's so nice to have someone from the embassy there, and Jamaica is steering that process. But your...
Repeat my name in the interest of time. The biggest question that I have had the whole evening is that all of us are busy in our own corners talking about the future. What is it going to take to bring us all together in the same room, worldwide, and really commit towards making the world a better place for the future generations? We ask very deep questions. When you look at, I like the argument by this gentleman, and say, do we really want to be a Singapore? Do we want to be a Dubai? Or do we just want to be able to survive? When we were coming up, Kate asked me, what got you into talking about the issues of the future? And I said, I was inspired by my own community. That if I don't stand up and fight for their rights, within a few years there'll be a thing of the past. So that in itself motivates me. But the question is, at what point are we going to be able to bring that conversation into policy making? The work that I do in terms of legislative proposals that I come up with in Parliament still have a long way to be able to cater for the future generations. Currently, it's about what is good for the current generation. You know, there's no piece of legislation which is being designed with the future in mind. That is one piece of work that I'm actually trying to ensure that every piece of legislation which is proposed has its future-centric. The way we live in our boundaries is affected by our neighboring countries. I learned that during the COVID era. And a small farmer in Narrow County, where I come from, was affected by decisions that were being made in the Netherlands in terms of how the world viewed, you know, the COVID pandemic. So currently, what I'm looking to do is to recruit about 94 ambassadors. And these 94 ambassadors will come from each and every county. We have 47 counties. I want to recruit 2 from 2 generations so that they can be able to discuss. Because when you sit down, I was telling Kate and Linda that I took my kids for lunch on Sunday. My son is 12 years old, my daughter is 16 years old. And those are 2 different generations. What interests my son does not interest my daughter. So they are lucky that their father is already talking about the future, trying to make this world a better place. But what about the other 20 million young Kenyans who have to worry about what to eat today, not even tomorrow? What about those children who are not born yet, who the current administration is taking huge loans and they'll be responsible to pay for them? So those are the tough questions that I'm asking, and I'm hoping that the work that all of you are doing and the work that I'm doing in the legislative arm of government can all come together so that even employment, I want to be as basic as that. In terms of employment, currently, we are not thinking about the future. We are only thinking about the older generations. The youth are all
a little bit about how impact networks is a very good part of thinking about the future and how we collectively come together, just from a small foundation perspective.
Sure. One of the main things that Small Foundation does is support impact networks, what we call impact networks, like the NGFP network. So we don't want to necessarily get into the entire thing, but we support business ecosystems in Africa, and kind of the thesis, the idea behind it is to prove out that African businesses are investable. So one of the reasons that we invest in impact networks is that we take an ecosystem-wide approach, and we think that there are complex problems that are causing issues, and that it takes people coming together, from various kind of levels and departments and walks of life to work towards those problems. And we kind of feel like that can only happen through networks of people coming together. So, yeah, I suppose that's
Great. Thank you, Ben. A round of applause. You did very impactful work. I'm going to come to the NGFP members, and I want to have an intergenerational presence here. So I'm going to invite another speaker we had for the night to just join us also here, Duncan Okello. I see you. Duncan Okello, as he's coming, he was formerly with SAID, and at the moment he's the commissioner at the Kenya Law Reform Commission. And just after the NGFP speak, he will be giving us some remarks.
I'm part of the next generation foresight practitioners. My background is in climate and energy law, and that's majority of what I'll speak about. But a quick introduction for what NGFP is. We're a group of young foresight and futurists from all over the world. It's a huge network, but particularly the Africa is where majority of my work has been. So we're a group of African futurists, and some of them on the stage here. And we have been doing a lot of work to bring an African perspective into foresight and futures and champion for young people's inclusion in foresight and future spaces. Particularly with the Climate and Energy Futures Hub. It's a subset within the NGFP that is focused on climate and energy conversations that have a foresight perspective. We all know that climate change is going to be the biggest existential crisis of the future, and so addressing the climate and energy issue with foresight perspective, I think, is critical. And the work we've done so far, we've been part of the past two COPs, and a lot of the work that SOIF and SAID have done to get us to COP and to make sure that the African youth's voice is present in these conversations. Coming in at the very end, being tokenized and not being part of the continuous dialogue throughout the year. Initially, the work started with the Digital Futures Project, which was on the screen somewhere. Yeah, there we are. That's me on the edge, and that's Frank and some of my other colleagues. We came together and we tried to map out what some of these emerging technologies mean for the continent of Africa. Majority of these technologies are just inherited onto the continent, and without the African value, African context, African interests at the core, and we just inherit them and we start using them. And then later on, we have problems that we have to undo later on. So why not at the very onset design these technologies, adopt these technologies with an African perspective in mind? And that's what the AI4D project was. AI4D stands for Artificial Intelligence for Development in Africa. So essentially creating a set of recommendations for policymakers, like Senator here, to try and make sure that when we're bringing these technologies onto the continent of Africa, we ask the critical questions. Who is this in interest for? Who is this benefiting? Who is this harming? And how can we mitigate those risks? And pass back to Pasi.
Great. Thank you. We want to hear the other voices. So Iman has represented you all very well, but I know you have things to add. Nancy, quick intro and then.
Thank you very much. My name is Nancy Muge. I'm so privileged to be here with my former mentor at the Institute of Economic Affairs, and also Dr. Chai when we did the Kenya Youth Scenarios. I think for me, reflecting back, because we've been in this journey since 2009, when we began to ask the question about what would be the future of young people in Kenya 30 years. At that time, 2030 looked like a distant past. Actually, many young people couldn't think about what Kenya would look like 20 years, because 2030 in 2009 looked like it was so far away. But right now, we are almost like 6 years to 2030, and the same problems we saw in 2009 are the very problems that have even become more complicated. And so the question is, what can we be able to do to be able to actually make sure that the countries that we live in, which is Kenya, but also the continent, that we are able to break from where we are to be able to look at the mental models and also the foundation of what has built this particular current future that we are living in to be quite different, because we cannot be able to build the future with the same kind of systems and thinking that we are currently building in. And so for me, I'm kind of interested in understanding how I can contribute towards the Summit of the Future. I know there has been mixed discussions around it, but this is our world, and if we don't shape it, where else can we be able to go to? And I was part of the Africa Digital Futures, and I think one of the things that Iman has shared, which is very fundamental, is who is manufacturing this technology? Why is the continent not designing them? But also, what are the indigenous knowledges that we do have that, and how can we be able to preserve them to be able to hand over to the next generation? That said, I think for me, the rallying call is being able to look into our foundations, because we cannot be able to build the future with the same kind of thinking.
Thank you, Arana. As you have the mic at Chawapa, talk to us a little bit about the work you're doing as an NGFP member on energy futures, energy transition. 30 seconds.
Thank you, Percy. My name is Esther Wanza. I'm a youth advocate, a youth supporter under the SDG7 Youth Constituency. For those who don't know about the SDG7 Youth Constituency, is a youth advocacy platform hosted under the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth, mainly supporting youth inclusion in policy-making processes, and also helping, and someone talked about education for the young people to participate in building their future. Having capacity building programs for young people to be able to know what can they do in their own communities to change the narrative, to be part of the building the future. So that's what the SDG7 Youth Constituency is all about, helping young people to be at the table, at the main table where the policies are being made, being included, and also being educated to build their own future. Thank you, Percy.
Yes, Duncan, you have 30 seconds. If we do, to be specific, I want you to talk about digital futures, but from where we moved in designing scenarios on the possibilities of the future of digital transformation in Africa, and how that became something that the African Union invited us as NGFP members who worked in this project to go and influence policymakers in Addis. So 30 seconds, just share the story.
30 seconds. My name is Dr. Coleman. As I think I've introduced myself to a couple. I come from an IT background. I was working at the Ministry of IT, specifically with the ICT Authority, when we were doing a very transformational project, and it was a digital literacy project, which he spoke about education, and that was basically a concept for introducing 21st, or trying to introduce and empower early ECTE students with 21st century skills to equip them to be able to tackle this changing, ever-changing world. It's a digital age now. We are natives. We're more or less not natives. Some of us are like immigrants. But yeah, as we keep on thinking about how to transform multi-sectoral issues that we face. I remember coming into this also, we were talking with the Rural Futures Hub, and the Rural Futures Hub, well, takes a very agricultural perspective to it all, and then you somehow see there's all these interconnections going into the rural futures, and agriculture, and climate, and environment, and somehow from my background, we were basically taught to be enablers, enable core business to function at the optimum, most effective, and most efficient. So I think that's why the AU called us up, because we had already thought about data governance as different pockets. Actually, West Africa is not just us here in Kenya, sorry, but West Africa and South Africa. And so we were basically resonating on the same thing. And what we were saying is that we need to basically go to the ground, try and get in touch with this digital natives who are now finding different ways of using technology. Someone will call him a hacker, but he's actually solving a problem to himself or to those around him. And if we can somehow find a way of galvanizing this information, or trying to get this information, and especially futures and foresight thinking, into someone who is in Bomet at that digital hub that the senator here have been setting up in all counties. I've also worked with them on that. You can imagine the chances or the opportunity to further permeate this thinking and therefore progress on that scale.
Great, thank you, Duncan. And the last and final NGFP voice in the room, Frank, share with us your experience. 30 seconds, tricky.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Frank. My background is security and IT. 30 seconds is a bit limited, but I'll just try. First of all, I like the initiative that SOIF, collaboration with SOIF, put together. The privilege to meet other NGFP members, whom I've worked very closely with. I work closely with the man on African digital futures. It's good we have the Senator Dama Lekina here. We discussed a lot of things using the futures and foresights. Tools that represented us to come up with a green manifesto. When the campaigns were running, we used this platform to imagine a future where we can take part as young youths to see how we can be a voice and how we can take part in the campaigns, in the political fields when it comes to policy making and all these things. But I'm not going to go into that. Like I said, you only have 30 seconds. Just one thing I've been thinking about as we're having the discussions in the room. We say it's intergenerational fairness. I'd just like to think that intergenerational care would be much better and a safe word to use. Perhaps this is something we can consider taking up as the discussions continue.
Thank you. A round of applause for that. Thank you so much.